So it was something that I was analyzing a lot because we get lots of entrepreneurs who are like, hey, what should I do with my life, et cetera. And when I look at how my income has increased, throughout my career, a lot of times it wasn't a function of the work ethic. In the beginning, you have to work, right? But then the next big lever on that is the opportunity. And so if you think about any kind of output in a system as volume times leverage equals output, the work has to start. So you have to have something to multiply, which is the effort. And then the next is that leverage. And so within the context of a business, I tried to define it for myself, which was how many potential units of the product can I sell? And then what is the gross margin potential of the product that I'm trying to sell? And then what are the competitive dynamics within the marketplace? And so an example of something that has two of the three and not necessarily all three would be like, if I want to get into telecommunications. So I said, okay, I hate that I have no service. Like I want to solve this problem. And so I'd say, well, everybody needs phone stuff. So huge potential market. The gross margins on an additional user is almost 100%. So, okay, really attractive. But then what are the competitive dynamics? Oh, I would have a really hard time entering into this marketplace because it's super capital intensive, et cetera. And it's like, okay, so maybe the opportunity now we rewind the clock 50, 60 years or 80 years, and that was the opportunity, right? Because you had all three of the dynamics. But then you look at newer things like crypto, you look at, the cannabis industry, which is still nascent. And those were a lot of people smoke weed or want to, be involved in that industry or participate in consuming it, right? There's great margins, especially if you're vertically integrated within the space. And then the competitive dynamics are still like, you can still be a new entrant and have a huge amount of market share as it's continuing to grow faster than the rest of the marketplace as well. So there's a fast growing market that's growing faster. So if you just stayed the same as the market, you're still going to outpace anybody else.
Really good.
And there's fewer people taking it up. And so it's like you have two competitive dynamic kind of like trail winds behind you. And so when I looked at, like we exited our 3 companies last year, I was like, okay, I want to be really, really selective about what opportunity we pursue, because I know that, Warren Buffett's like one of my big heroes. And he talks about how it's much more about not about how hard you row, but about what boat you're in. And he tells a story about how he had a companion who was basically the same as him, and they both split off from Columbia, and he became Warren Buffett, and the other guy just had a normal career in the steel business. Different opportunity. And so I think leverage is the difference between the inputs and outputs in a system. It's the discrepancy between what you put in and what you get out. So if I have a lot of leverage, then it means if I put a little bit in, I get a lot out. If I have low leverage, I have to put a lot in to get a little bit out. If I'm working at a froyo shop, I have to put a lot of time in to get a very little amount of money. So I have very low leverage. If I do put a deal together, right, and I make a couple phone calls, and then that deal yields me $10 million from connecting parties and then maybe underwriting something, all of a sudden that's a lot of leverage. So I put a very little bit amount of time in, I get a lot of money. And so the idea of using more leverage is looking at what my inputs and my outputs are and figuring out how I can create bigger and bigger discrepancies between those.
Are there different types of leverage other than just money?
Yes.
which are?
So anything that increases your output without per unit of effort is leverage. And so that can happen in the physical space. So like a literal lever increases your leverage. If we take this podcast and you put it on YouTube, that was leverage because we put the same input in, but then we get more output. If I have a cold calling system and I'm able to now dial 10 phone numbers per minute because I have a dialer that's doing outbound, I have more leverage per unit time. If I take a form of media and then I transcribe it, and then I also make an audio version, that is leverage. So all of those are different versions of just getting more out for what you put in.